Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. I'm going to try and talk about a response video to my Market Monday video because a lot of people have been asking me for a video about how I would fix Modern. If I could just go down a detailed plan of what I think it would take to get the spark back into Modern. I think that that's what Modern's really missing here. I don't think it's going to die anytime soon. I just think that the 30% market value going down has a lot more to do than just that we're getting out of Modern season, and has a lot more to do with just the drive just isn't there to play Modern. I've noticed it in myself, anecdotal. I've noticed in other people and other experiences I've had. I understand this is only my own perspective, but I am pretty much entrenched and involved in the community, and it just doesn't seem to have the excitement that it once possessed. And I think it all changed after the Eldrazi Winter. The Eldrazi Winter was a term people like to use for how dominant the Eldrazi were from the Pro Tour up until their next banning of so the next set that was released after that. I'm trying to think which set that would have been. Oath the Gatewatch onto Shadows, I think. So even that entire time where just the Eldrazi completely dominated the format, and it was really hard to play any other deck that didn't either could compete with Eldrazi, be fast enough to beat Eldrazi, or just play Eldrazi itself. So that was the beginning point. I think banning Twin was a huge problem with Wizards because it wasn't too, I wouldn't even consider it too dominant. Wizards just basically had a knee-jerk reaction, said, oh, it won 2 Pro Tours in a row and did well at some other top finishes at like Grand Prix. Let's axe it to try to spice things up. And I think that it's just been a series of those type of events that have really killed the spark of Modern. So what can we do to fix Modern? What can Wizards of the Coast do to fix Modern? So I came up with 5 bullet points, and I'm not the best teleprompter reader, so bear with me as I try to read down my list. I did put it up here. I know it's probably pretty hard for you to see up on the screen, but I did have kind of typed it out. There's probably spelling and grammar errors galore on here as I just jotted it down for the video. I'll also post this in the link in the description, or just in the description I'll post this. So how to fix Modern. The first one I want to talk about is Modern needs clear, concise goals on what they want to achieve from the format. So issues on this is something as simple as how fair or interactive or uninteractive do you want to put up with? How interactive do you want it to be? Right now I feel like that we're riddled with a lot of uninteractive decks. I know that it's completely legal in Modern and Vintage to just go wild with combo and just 2-card combos and Storm and Locks and things like that, that some people, myself included, find not very fun to play against. And so I think we need a statement from Wizards. We need we'll go on to the bullet point 2, which is consistency. But right now I just want goals. What is the goal for Modern? The turn 4 has been basically repeated over and over again, but I don't think that Wizards has ever come out clearly and said what their goals are. So what crosses the boundaries of interactive or unfair? Eggs? Bloom? But yet we have still Storm in the format. We still have like Jeskai Ascendancy, which those are both way past turn 4 consistent. But we do have some other uninteractive decks that are basically playing the exact same game over and over, like Ad Nauseam. There still is some versions of like Dredge that is very uninteractive. There is the Goro's Vengeance or the Brigamos type build with that. Are those okay? If they're okay, then what about Eggs and Bloom? Why were they banned? What's the whole story behind that? I don't think that they've given a clear reasoning where one is okay and where one's the other. Where should the power level be? Pod's not okay. Deathrite's not okay. Stoneforge Mystic is not okay. Jace isn't okay. What about some of the cards that right now are pretty dominant in the format or are looking to become very dominant in the format, like Liliana, for example? Is that going to be too dominant in time to come? What is your criteria for it too powerful for the format? Does it have to do with dominance? Does dominance play a factor? Because even if it is a fair deck, but everyone prefers to play it, does that really put it on the chopping block to become banned if it starts to win a bunch of Pro Tours like Twin did? Twin only had about 16% of the metagame, yet it was considered too dominant because it won a couple Pro Tours in a row and did some highly finished at Grand Prix. All right, so How aggressive should the format be? They've mentioned time and time again about turn 4. Is this still the rule of thumb? Because right now there are decks that are really, really like Death Shadows and Goryo's Vengeance and Infect and various Kiln Fiend or even Zoo builds that are definitely very consistent before turn 4, turn 3. Some of those can even kill as quickly as turn number 1. Fast mana, is that something that you consider acceptable? Chrome Mox was banned, but Seeming Spirit Guide is still okay. How about poor design cards? People have talked about the Phyrexian mana just leading to very, very poor designs. Gitaxian Probe allows like a 56 card deck, for example, with very, very minor negative effects from the just 2 life, draw a card, look at a hand. I mean, a lot of people would trade that to have a card in the deck. There's so many strategies, a card in the graveyard and information. How about, like, a lot of people have not really liked high attrition cards like Thoughtseize? How do we establish what is a good design and what is not design? How about cards that don't work as intended? There are plenty of combo decks that are just basically exploiting the wording. Should cards be reworked, maybe banned in a different card that it can't be exploited, or used as it was not intended, be replaced? I mean, that's kind of what all these other games do. If there's like a bug in a game, they just fix the coding. We understand you can't do that in Paper Magic, but maybe would a better way just be, how about the next standard set, print a card that's very similar, that doesn't cause like these loops or these rules that are being violated just because the cards say so? What's your stance on that? I think as a community we need to come together and have clear, concise goals on what we want as a format. Speaking of like cards that a lot of people hate, what about hate cards like Blood Moon or Stony Silence or even Grafdigger's Cage, where people feel like just these one card decks that just shut down decks? Are those acceptable? Because so many games are just won or lost based on if a hate card was drawn or not drawn. So there's a lot of discussion being made around that. I don't think that Modern has ever established that. And I'm thinking in the comments section we're going to have a lot of disagreements and arguments about what we want for a Modern format. And I think that Wizards needs to take the charge. They need to figure it out. They need to put their finger in the air and try to figure out a good consensus of what the Modern format should include and what it should not include. All right, 2 is consistency. Once we've established our goals, then it needs to be consistent. The ban list looks more like darts being thrown at a board rather than any consistency in the ban. I've talked about this earlier with Eggs, Bloom, but not, Storm has been nerfed, Eggs has been nerfed, Bloom has been nerfed. Other cards have been completely outright killed that weren't necessarily consistent. I would even say some of the early bannings weren't necessarily consistent and were very broken up by the excuse that Thoughtseize just breaks up Goryo's Vengeance. Well, Thoughtseize just breaks up decks in the past as well that were very, very high variance type decks. So I think that we need to be very, very consistent. If a deck breaks the turn 2 rule, even if it isn't incredibly consistent in its turn 2 breaking, then maybe we need to look at the cards that are causing that. Seeming Spirit Guide and Become Immense come up on this list a ton because they lead to these they're not very consistent, but they lead to turn 2 and turn 3 victories when they are in hand and there is no disruption thrown their way. So fast mana cards, some are legal and some are. Format warping cards like Bloodbraid Elf, Twin, and Potter banned, but similar powerful strategies and dominance are still fair game. Some uninteractive combo decks that people considered unfun to play against, especially Eggs, were axed, but others are still left untouched. So we need, once we've established those goals, there needs to be some congruency, some consistency. Number 3, and this one is a big one, is coverage. Players need a reason to play. They need examples at the highest level possible. I understand that WotC needs to spotlight their latest sets. We know that if they miss like Oath of Gatewatch, that's huge. They need to spotlight those cards in a standard setting. That's what the Pro Tour is there for. I actually don't suggest that they bring Modern back into the Pro Tour. I suggest they create some other tournament function, some other drive for Modern, and Worlds and Grand Prix are just not enough. There needs to be a dedicated tournament for specifically Modern. So it just needs a reason for Modern players to keep on playing. I keep hearing this anecdotal evidence again that the Modern scene is so good at their local game store. Well, that doesn't apply to everyone else. Maybe it works for your scene. other scenes that you need the pro circuit. You need something for people to try to strive for, to achieve for, if you're going to make the format actually legitimate. I think that's what's really, really hurting Vintage and Legacy, is the communities are just so small and there's just not enough tournaments that are actually making it actually worthwhile for people to invest in that. If they want Modern to continue, they need to spotlight it. The GPs are basically stepping stones as qualifiers, and same thing with the PTQ circuit. That's not exciting to be able to build a Modern. It almost feels like a chore that you need to build a Modern deck to compete in a Grand Prix. People want to make it to the big show, and there needs to be a big show for Modern. I suggest that there needs to be a Modern championship with its own road to qualification and its own glory that's independent of the Pro Tour. Yes, pros, of course, can be on it, and pros should strive to qualify for it, but it should be something that's just independent and its own little tournament. I think that WotC could easily shove in a tournament, maybe even have like funding. I talked about this with MTG headquarters, that games like League of Legends and Dota 2, those big tournaments are 100% fan funded. In Dota 2, you receive what's called a compendium. You pay $10 to buy a compendium, and they could do the exact same thing with Modern. You could buy like a Modern compendium and then earn prizes and rewards throughout competing in the Modern season, and have a huge portion of that entry fee go to funding the Modern championship. I think this would be a great way to keep the excitement, the spark going for Modern. All right, number 4, which is probably the biggest one, is communication. WotC needs to effectively communicate with its player base. They have jumped the gun and missed the mark plenty of times in the past. The first time WotC tried to pull Modern from the Pro Tour circuit, there was an outcry by fans. After the Eldrazi Winter, which I personally thought made for a very exciting and entertaining Pro Tour, Wizards once again decided to quash Modern, but this time they had an excuse. It wasn't received very well, and they said, "Look, we told you so. We told you that if we were going to continue to do Pro Tours, there'd have to be some bannings," and then it led to Twin being banned and people being upset and blah 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 blah, and then the Eldrazi Winter. And then, so what was their way of doing it? Without communicating with the fan base, they just pulled it. They need to stop doing this. They need to actually communicate with the player base and the fan base. This is incredibly important for establishing those clear goals and the consistency and the coverage. What do we as fans want? They need to find that out. How do we want it done? In a tournament setting, like I said, a huge coverage, a huge celebration. They've warned us at the competitive scene that bannings are inevitable. WotC does a terrible job at communicating this. Once upon a time, there was a discussion about the watch list. You guys remember that? To give players ample notice that certain cards are on the danger zone of being banned. What happened to this? In short, WotC needs a better job of communicating with players and fans. If Modern is the most popular Eternal format, they should actively be asking how to improve and make their experience more exciting. So I think that's very important. I don't think that people, if they want to invest in cards that are like on the chopping block or really close to being on the chopping block, then user beware. They've been advised. And again, this goes to the goals. I think they should make it clear. Are banning something that are going to be more common than uncommon? You know, each ban, we should be expecting it to be shaken up every, basically its own rotation. Or are bans going to be few and far between, only necessary to really get rid of degenerate or completely dominant, like say Jund goes to 75%. Again, needs to have clear goals and clear consistency and follow through with clear communication. Last but definitely not least, actually I would put number 5 as the very most important. That was a double positive. Very most important. Good job, Kevin. You can speak very... I give up. Anyway, they need to change their tone on Eternal formats. This is huge, because WotC seems to not get it. That's the problem. I mean, that's why I have a huge respect for Tolarian Community College, because he's so quick to call them out on, like, are you kidding me? Just go and watch the latest Planeswalker deck by Tolarian Community College. It's like, you've just achieved nothing by doing this, because, again, you didn't listen. You didn't... You need to change your tone. You need to be involved in the community and really deliver what people want. And they need to change their tone on Eternal formats, especially Modern, because they just don't get exactly how important Modern is to the community and to the players. So let me just read through this. It is very clear that WotC wants to focus all in on Standard, but I think this is a trap. I've seen it time and time again, especially as a local game store owner now, and being in the competitive scene. A new player excitedly joins the Magic scene. They at first are hesitant and just dip their toes into the action, usually gravitating towards standard, but just playing with a few cards that they have picked up here and there to make do. A rotation goes by, and usually they blame that they didn't have the power level the last standard season. They just weren't on power level par because they just weren't invested like other players were. But this time is going to be different. This rotation is a brand new standard, and they're going to jump all in. They're going to buy the latest Tier 1 deck. They're going to read the coverage. They're going to read all the pro articles. They are going to do their best this standard season. And before they know it, it's time for rotation again. And that $400 deck they just spent all this money on is rotating out, and they're losing 90% of the value that's rotating out. For Modern, cards that go in any other Eternal format, there's few and far between cards that can actually transcend that standard to Modern. So they get frustrated. Maybe they stay with 1 or 2 more rotations when it just becomes too much of a burnout. They need something then to transition them into something that is everlasting or eternal. And this is where Modern, I feel, is the glue that holds the competitive scene together. The burnout happens with Standard. It's happened to me. Then I'm like, that's it. I'm going to sit a Standard season out and just focus on Modern. Once I invest in that Soul Sisters deck, I have a deck forever to play. I never, ever, ever again have to invest in the core of that deck unless something gets banned, which again we've talked about. They can make a better job communicating with that, with their player base. So it's just something that is so necessary for people to have value in their collection or a reason to continue to play. Otherwise, we're going to see Standard. I think this is what we saw before Modern. I would say the success of Magic going from the really flat, I would say from Torment, Odyssey, clear back in the day, we had this like 5 million player base that was just flat. We'd get new players in, but as many new players would come in, we'd have people leave the game. And it was just because they couldn't really transition into anything that was lasting. And then they came up with this genius idea, Modern. Legacy was plagued by a very old reserve list expensive cards and was very hard. It had a huge barrier of entry. And it just wasn't a very good way to transition players into an older format. But they made Modern, and Modern was very successful. We saw Magic go from Scars of Mirrodin into Innistrad, and then Innistrad into Return to Ravnica, or sorry, other way around. Innistrad into Return to Ravnica, Innistrad into Return to Ravnica, like double. And then Ravnica into Theros, double again. And then Theros into Constant Arcere. It's because everyone was excited about this new modern Magic, where you could start Standard, and once you basically take the training wheels off of Standard, then you could go into the Modern format, and it was robust and lively. They came out with this format called Modern Masters, or this new set called Modern Masters. It is the most successful Grand Prix of all times. It sold out. It was overflowed. They didn't have enough judges. They didn't have enough space for it. They didn't have enough product. And it was just received way, way, way more than they expected. And then they did it again for Modern Masters 2. Just huge. This is the biggest convention. Everyone gathered for it in Las Vegas. There's huge hype. Everyone is excited. So what do they do for Modern Masters 3? Oh, we'll just release a set. We'll release another Eternal Masters money-grabbing set and have nothing really. It'll have a low amount of cards actually going out. The people can draft it maybe a few times, and then it's too expensive at $14 a pack is what retail will have it be. And they just don't want to invest it for a draft set. They're going to make it a draft set for some reason, even though the people have a very good opportunity drafting it. Whew. Wizard just does not know what they're doing, and it just baffles me that they can go from 2 successful modern releases and just say, oh, we're just going to throw it out there. So let me just go over. So there's that. I think that the modern scene was huge, and they only have themselves to blame if it collapses. And there's easy fixes to this. It's just to change the attitude of modern. Lastly, down to here, I think it's a huge myth within our own community and with the WotC echo chamber that modern does not sell packs. Once a player is hooked, they actually look forward to a new set to see what modern potentials await. How many people are just like me? I don't look at a new... When Kaladesh came out, I didn't look for standard cards. I didn't look to see, oh my god, what is this going to do for standard? How is this going to affect rotation? Yes, that came later on, but the very first thing I did when I saw those Kaladesh spoilers is there a card for Soul Sisters? What new toy? Do I have a new toy for my Eternal deck, to my pet deck that I've invested money in? How about Scred Red? How about Dredge? How about all these other decks that Living End? Is there something for Living End? Is there something for what other decks? A Tooth and Nail? Something I can play? How about these other cool cards? What will they do in Modern? What kind of busted combos can I do in Modern? Because Modern is just so more wide open and versatile to get excited about. There's just thousands upon thousands of cards to work with. Not just a few cards here and there that a new set or in some of these older sets are going to provide. So I think that I'm actually in the majority, not minority, of people that get excited about a new set for what it can do for Eternal formats, Commander and Modern especially. Not necessarily Standard. Standard is just an afterthought for me. Standard is usually just like it's like a new achievement for me, like a new unexplored thing that I'll get bored of eventually. That's what I look forward to Standard rotations. It's like, okay, we're starting all over again. It's like a new season of sports. Last year was great, but this year might be something different. The Modern is like a dynasty. Modern is like a thing that continues to go on. My success of Soul Sisters is everlasting. My success in a Standard deck is fleeting because it's no longer relevant. And it's Modern sells packs. It absolutely sells packs. Look at Prized Amalgam and Eldrazi Displacer and Collective Brutality, to name a few. Compare that with cards like Tireless Tracker or Sylvan Advocate. Cards that see play mostly just in Standard and had a huge percentage of the metagame. It was up to like 35% of decks played the Sylvan Advocate, or even more than that I believe at one point in Standard. I think it was even with Bant, and every other deck that wasn't Bant was still running Sylvan Advocate. Had a huge share of the format, yet the prices stayed pretty flat for Sylvan Advocate, around $5. Whereas there was huge gains from like Prized Amalgam because they hit the Modern scene, and Collective Brutality recently because it hits the Modern scene, and Grim Harrispex, and some of these other cards. People get excited about Modern. And Wizards needs to realize that, and they need to put this in their business plan, and they need to continue to design cards that are strictly for Modern or strictly for Commander, and understand that this is a very vibrant and excited and large community that is going to give Standard a shot. It's going to, the focus can still be on your Standard sets, and you can still achieve this by creating exciting, robust, vibrant format called Modern. So, in short, Modern and other Eternal casual formats sell sets. They need to identify and appreciate that. So let's just wrap this up. I think if we go through my 5-step program, there you go, I should become a politician. If we have clear, concise goals on what we want to achieve as a Modern format, with WotC leading the charge, trying to get the information out there and get everyone's input, then we establish consistency, clear rules on what cards should be banned, unbanned, or what actually is it dominance, is it breaking the turn 4 rule, clear, consistent rules on Modern. Then we need to establish a plan to have coverage and have it not interfere with their visions for what they want for the Pro Tour Standard. I understand completely why they do that. So coverage, talk to the community, what do we want to see? How should we fund it? How should we get people excited for it? Then there needs to be communication on how they're going to achieve these first 3 goals, what they're going to implement for coverage and consistency and goals. And lastly, again, they need to change their tone on Eternal formats. They really need to understand it's the glue that holds it all together. Hope you enjoyed this video. I think I am not looking forward to... People misinterpret why I make videos. I think I said it in the opening to my Market Monday video. I do videos because I want to spark discussion. I want change. I want potential to be achieved out of everything. I don't want Magic just to be a good game or an okay game. I want Magic to be a great game. I want Magic to just crush Hearthstone. I want Magic to crush everything, to be a very popular and successful game or even sport, however you want to best describe our experience of it. I find it a very it's something that gets me going. I love running the YouTube channel. I don't want to switch over to something else. I don't want to kill Modern. I want to play Modern. I want to have fun with Modern. I want to be excited about it again. I don't want to be scared and apprehensive. And I think that we need to push for this. We need as a community to come together and make sure that this is achieved and make our voices heard and say, Wizards, include us. There are so many good ideas within the multiverse of Magic the Gathering. They want diversity of ideas. We have them. We have people with many different backgrounds, many different opinions on and we all should be represented and have that voice. And Wizards should be actively striving to hear that voice. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this. Love to see the dislikes. I know people, again, just misunderstand where I'm coming from. I think that achieves more dislikes than anything. But I appreciate the support. Just going to upload this video as is. Hopefully I did an okay job. Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.